Hi class, we're on week 2 of our class, and today we're talking about stereotyping and aging. Side note, if you have questions about the project I discussed in the first week, please don't hesitate to email me. The treatment planner book that you've used for that project isn't until later in the semester, so don't feel like it's something you have to come up with right now. But I do need to know what topics you want to do the project on. But anyways, like I mentioned, we're talking about stereotyping and aging. A stereotype is a generalized opinion based off experience and tends to be irrational. Things that, older people are stereotyped on is illness, impotency, ugliness, mental decline, uselessness, isolation, poverty, and depression. There's 2 forms of stereotyping. There is biomedicalization and there's compassionate stereotyping. Now, biomedicalization is the stereotyping just doing specifically with the body, not having anything to do with the whole behavior of a person and the social constructs of a person. And you have to think of, we are more than just our biology. We have, our psychological components, we have our spiritual components, and of course we have our biological components. And that's all of us. We're holistically one person, right? And so with this stereotyping, we're just looking at one part of a person and not looking at the full picture. This is problematic. Now you may ask yourself, well, I don't get why compassionate stereotyping is negative. Well, it paints people in a very helpless light. The book talks about Easter seals and their what's it called? The image, that portrays them in their advertisements, and it tends to be a very helpless individual, and that's not fair to an aging adult. They're not helpless, and it's making an assumption about them. Although I feel like the heart is in the right place, meaning that older people are deserving of certain services. Yes, this is true, but that doesn't mean that they're all helpless and capable people. So it's something to think about in your own thought process of aging. How do you see people, and what are your stereotypes? It might be something to think about as you go through this chapter. Older people continue to have a negative attention in the media. You think of the Bob Dole commercial where he talks about Viagra. Very stereotypical. Again, making a lot of assumptions, and people got a rise out of it because he's an old guy and he's up there and he's talking about how, Viagra's helped him out. Again, though, labeling and putting a mindset in people's minds. I keep thinking of the Fallen I Can't Get Up medical alert commercial that's super old that still airs on TV. And it's really, really pathetic. Not to say those things don't happen to people, but it's making it an assumption. You get to be a certain age and you need your medical alert button. You look at older male adults, no offense to you males out there, but they tend to go for younger women. You see this often in the media. I think, George Clooney just got engaged, and I believe he's pretty close to being 50, and I'm pretty sure he's dating or is engaged now to a very young, successful woman. Not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but again, you don't see many males who are in the media dating women that are near them in age. Again, communicating once you reach a certain age that you're not as attractive, you don't have as much to offer, and that stems to play out in society with everyday males because it's modeled to them. Aging is a gradual process, as we know, and everyone ages at a different rate. So, what's 80 for one person may look very different for another 80-year-old. So to put everybody under an umbrella is not really fair. I have a neighbor right now, actually I just saw her the other day, and she's in her 90s, and she fights really hard for her independence. And probably most people would write her off and think, wow, she shouldn't be doing this or she shouldn't be doing that, or would be shocked at what she does to stay independent, and wouldn't give her a chance, when in all actuality here she is, still living in her own house, still watering her lawn, up until recently was still doing her own yard work. And that's not every 90-year-old, but for her that is the case. And so to make a generalization about her is not necessarily fair. self-concept is how you view yourself, and a lot of times, like, going, how this ties in is, you know, you view yourself based on how you think of yourself, and how you see yourself, and then we have the whole self construct of self, and that's how society sees you. And so you may see yourself one way, but society may see you another way, and there could be some controversy there. You may see yourself as being fully capable. I'm fully attractive. I'm confident. I'm getting older, but I have a lot to offer the world. And then you might be frustrated by what society tells you. Some people are very moldable and pliable to what society tells us. And so they may get depressed or try to keep up with what society's saying. So I look old, so let me go get some plastic surgery so I don't, because people aren't going to respect me if I don't look young. Things of that nature. And so it's important for us to know this about aging adults and like where they're at, especially if you have them in your counseling office. You're going to want them to feel comfortable and be respected and not feel like there's any stereotypes put on them by you. Phenomenology is now a current phenomena, ironically, in gerontology, the study of it, and it's using narratives from aging adults to get their experiences and to try to learn from them and grow from them, and not just all be about data, but again, learning from the experiences and trying to gain insight from that. One thing we noticed too from some of these studies is that children develop opinions about the elderly or aging at a very young age, and that of course is based from their home, whether it be their experiences with aging adults or whether it be their parents' experiences. They are very moldable and pliable at a young age, and they are soaking in whatever it is they see. We're realizing though that some of these attitudes are going to need to change as, like I mentioned last week, this baby boomer population is coming up, and there are going to be a lot of them, and we're going to need to be accepting and ready for the needs that are going to be needed for the aging adults in our society. One thing again that we notice too when you look at college students, there's a wide variety of opinions, but there is a strong stereotype of biomedicalization stereotyping, and that happens to be a huge problem because a lot of it is people that are going to be the future health professionals of our society, and they're just looking again at the biology of things, and when we think of some of those professionals, we're talking about pharmacists, we're talking about social workers, we're talking about doctors and nurses, care workers at facilities, and this isn't necessarily a good thing because they're not taking in the social and the behavioral components of a person, like I said, missing the holistic approach of treatment, and that could be harmful to an aging adult and limit some of their options. And we talked about this some last time, but again, going back to ageism, we noticed when we were young, we felt like we can't do things because we're young. People told us that. And that's the same kind of thing that happens as a person gets older. You can't do that because you're too old. When really, those kinds of comments are based off of experiences. I think of some young people who have done phenomenal things, especially right now with young people being so into social injustice. They're doing things all over the world to help social injustice, and they're very young. They're in their 20s. One of my favorite shows, it's still on, I believe, it's on CNN around Thanksgiving time. It was called CNN Heroes, and you got to see young people making huge differences. And stereotypically, young people are told, you can't do that, you're too young. But yet these people are, creating wells in Africa and rescuing women from the sex trafficking, and providing school materials for people in the Philippines who are on the streets. And again, very young people coming up with very mind-blowing changes in our world. Older people have the same capabilities, and this is something that we have to be aware of as we put limitations on the people potentially in our own lives. Or even things that you put on yourself. When I get old, I can't do that. Well, that's not necessarily true. And ageism is seen in an institutional standpoint, in a social standpoint, and spatially. And what I mean by spatially is just the separation, whether it be because of where an older adult needs to live, whether it be they can't be close to their family anymore, and then it becomes this isolation that happens. Like I said, the media affects a lot of our views of aging. You don't see very many weather girls who are in their 70s. Not to say you don't see very many older women in the media much anymore. I think the one older person that I see, or soon she will be retiring, is Barbara Walters. I think she's been in the media for so many years, and she's respected and thought of. And to me, she doesn't look too modified by plastic surgery. But then let me think, Joan Rivers. Some of you may not know who she is. Unfortunately, I do. And you know, she's on E, and she talks about the red carpets and all those things, and she is very she's full of plastic surgery. I mean, she tries to defy age. There's two totally different women who approach aging in very different ways. And again, this is what is modeled to our society. You know, we want to cover up the signs of aging instead of embracing it a lot of times. I think just most recently, I think it was either the Oscars or the Actor Guild, or maybe it was the Golden Globes. An older woman received a Golden Globe, and she had never had plastic surgery, and it was looked upon as being amazing because she still looked good, but she looked her age. And that's rare in Hollywood. And being down here in Southern California, we see a lot of that in our face because we're around it a lot. So these are just some things for you guys to think about. There's further information, of course, in your book. There's further information on the PowerPoint slides. But for some good things for you to think about and how you approach aging and how you approach people who are aging around you, and what you see for yourself, and what are your expectations for yourself, and how many of those stereotypes you have. That's just a bit of a challenge for you to think about that, and maybe think about things you may want to change. So until next week, I hope you have a good week. And like I said, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.